Drew and Kathy, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Kathy, you're okay as well? Excellent. We need to wait for the things, or go ahead and start.
I think we're good to go.
I'd like to welcome you all out to the planning commission this evening for March 17, 2021. Commissioner Hanson, Council Chair, this evening. We'll start the communication by Commissioner Thompson, followed by Pledge of Allegiance by our dear Heavenly Father, so very good to be able to discuss city matters. So great to be able to give you and be guided wise decisions as a to better pray for these Yeah. Now, join me. As we begin our meeting this evening, we'd like to acknowledge the presence of Councilman Staley. At this time, we'll look to approve the agenda for March 17, 2021.
This commission must select the agenda. Approval of the agenda for the meeting.
First and second, all in favor? Okay, the approval of the agenda is passed. Approval of the minutes from our previous meeting, March 3rd, 2021. This is the submission
Kathy, I make a motion to approve the minutes for planning commission meeting of March 2020. Commissioner Anderson.
First and second, all in favor of March 3rd? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item number 3, declaration of intentions and conflict with items. This is Commissioner Hanson, highway, on item 5A, other than the funds don't have a conflict with financial Any commissioners have any other extensions or comments? All right, at this time, we'll turn to item 4A, minor subdivision. This is consideration of recommendations to the city council for final plat of the Heartland minor subdivision located approximately 3342 South, 55 South, South Town, applicant's pass. Drew, I'll turn the time over to you for the staff report.
Thank you. Is that still the one with the reading? All right, the applicant has requested approval of the Heartland subdivision located at 642 through 3358 South Main. The application has 6 lots recorded following the vacation of the rest of the space subdivision to recommended approval of at your last meeting. This item ended up being tabled. The proposed minor subdivision is currently zoned residential agricultural running plan, utilizing lots density. The surrounding zoning of RA southeast with ag 20 acre to the west. That's the State Farm project is the ag 20. Staff has reviewed the request proposed Heartland subdivision conforms to the standards as set forth in zoning regulations of the city. Since the 66 lots is part of the Russell Phase 3 recorded plat, all dedications have been accepted by Washington City, and all existing easements remain in place. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the proposed Heartland subdivision to the City Council. And that's based on the findings and subject to the conditions, which are the standard 5 for a final plat. And for the most part, I'm pretty sure that 99.9% of it's already taken care of, since they were previously part of a subdivision that they're coming out of. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions that the commissioners have on the Heartland subdivision.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or even the applicant? Is that possible, Drew, if we have any for the applicant?
Yeah, if you had some, I'm not sure. Or is a member of the Stady family there tonight? I can't, the screen's too small for me to see.
I think that's, you had your mask on last time. Yes, there is one of the Staleys here. I don't think we have any questions here from the commissioners. If we don't, or no questions for the applicant or the staff, I'll entertain a motion for item 4A.
This is Commissioner Musso. I make a motion that we approve the Heartland minor subdivision located at approximately 3342 South to 3358 South Camino Real, and send this on to the City Council next week for approval.
Second that. Commissioner Van.
Got
All
it.
right, I
First,
do have one, sorry,
oh, go ahead.
I need to rock the boat. I do have one question. In the conditions here, number 5, it says the shared access area between lots 1 and 4 needs to be adjusted by calling it public utility and drainage easement. And then it says it needs to be extended 20 more feet into lots 2 and 3. When I look at the map here, I mean, lot 1 and 4 are nowhere near each other. Is that a typo, Drew?
It is a typo. I apologize for that. That was from I use my reports a lot for templates on final plats. That was from the previous one that I took that off of. So disregard condition number 5.
Points for Anderson. Nice catch.
I'm glad you caught that. So yeah, thank you.
I have a first and a second. Drew, do I need to have that motion again, or can I use what I have?
No, you're good. Just if whoever made the motion, just say, I'll amend it to eliminate condition 5, and then ask them if they want to still second it is what you need to do.
Okay, this is Commissioner Musso, and I amend my motion to disregard condition number 5 in the staff report.
And whoever seconded, you need to say, I still second that motion.
Commissioner Van, I second that motion.
I've got a first by Musso and a second by Commissioner Fitzampu for individual voting. Commissioner Steele. Aye. Commissioner Musso.
Aye.
Fitzampu.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Bullock.
Aye.
Yeah, and Commissioner Hanson, I'm an aye as well. The motion passes. We'll send that on to City Council. Is it next week, Drew, or is it in 2 weeks?
It's next week.
Next week? Okay.
Yeah, final plats go the following week.
All right, thank you. We will move to item 5A. This is a plat amendment. It's also a public hearing for consideration and recommendation to City Council for the Crossroads Phase 4 preliminary plat amendment located at approximately Farmhouse Drive and Stuckey Farms Parkway. The purpose of the amendment is to eliminate 2 lots within the final phase of Crossroads, allowing for the lots around the cul-de-sac to increase in size. Also, a gate has been added to the south intersection of Farmhouse Drive and Resolution Circle, reducing the road to a 36-foot private street section. The applicant is South Landing LLC and Carl Larson. Drew, I'll turn the time over to you for the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. As stated, the applicant's requesting the approval of the amended preliminary plat for Phase 4 of the Crossroads. The reason for this amendment request is, as stated, to eliminate 2 lots. And they're basically between lots 24 and 31. They used to go from 24 to 33. So they've taken 2 lots out and extended basically the boundaries of the rest of that area. So that's kind of what we're doing. So let me keep going. They're also in making Resolution Circle is, and I'll kind of draw that area. This is Resolution Circle. And they're going to be putting a gate here to make it a little gated cul-de-sac is what's part of this as well. Giving this private street area with these 8 lots. Staff's reviewed the proposed amended preliminary plat and finds it conforms to the planned community development of Stuckey Farms, the Stuckey Farms PCD zoning, and the subdivision also remains in compliance with subdivision ordinance of the city. Staff would like to recommend that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the amended preliminary plat for the Crossroads Phase 4 subdivision onto the City Council. And that's based, of course, on the original findings and subject to the original conditions, which were approved back on May 27th of 2015. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have in regards to this preliminary plat amendment.
This is Commissioner Hanson. I have a question, probably more so from Joe Public as opposed to the chair of the Planning Commission, and I know we don't get into HOA things, and I'm just curious if this, and I'm hoping that Carl's here. I could have just went over and talked to him today. It would have been probably easier to find out. And them doing this, these houses, because we just saw this project earlier tonight, and one that we saw in our last meeting with some homes being separated out or does it change anything with regards to the design or the HOA or anything like that in these houses where we might run into a similar issue as we did in their last meeting?
Is somebody on the phone from Stuckey Farms? I guess that's a negative answer, but
I wouldn't expect you to know that necessarily, Drew, but I'm just thinking ahead as far as what we just went through last meeting. If we're going to coordinate sections of neighborhoods out like this, I'm just hesitant. We might run into this, allow them to abide by different HOA rules. Even though we're not HOA, I understand that. I hope you understand my concern.
And this is Commissioner Musso, even piggybacking off of that concern is that if you're throwing in a gate there, the maintenance of those gates sometimes can get to be expensive. Is the whole HOA going to have to incur that cost of the maintenance on that, or is that going to be allocated to those, what is there, 7 lots or 8 lots? That would be my other question for the developer.
Commissioner Hanson, can I speak up real quick?
Absolutely.
So I just want to clarify at final plat, Public Works will be asking for easements on all these utilities in this private road. And we'll also be asking for access to maintain those utilities that'll be inside that private road. So that's something that we'll be asking for from our end to maintain those utilities.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it. Drew, with my question, this is Commissioner Hanson, with my question, I'll have another opportunity to ask this question to the developer. Is that correct? Regardless of voting tonight?
No, because, well, you will at final plat, but it's hard to, I wouldn't wait till the final plat. I mean, if it's really an issue and nobody's here to answer that question from the applicant, I'd almost recommend to you to do a table. I mean, I'm not a big fan of tabling, but that's why tables are there. If nobody's here to answer the question.
Hey, Drew, can you hear me?
And now,
Okay. Can you guys repeat your question? This is Brandy Walker with Civil Science.
Randy, this is Commissioner Hanson. What I wanted to know is by segregating these lots out and putting in a gate, does it separate them at all from the HOA rules and regulations that are in place?
No, so Stuckey Farms has a couple umbrellas. There's the master HOA, then there's neighborhood HOA. So Crossroads would have its own umbrella underneath the Stuckey Farms umbrella. And I just joined the call. I apologize, so I was a little bit late to the party, but this particular gated area is actually for the investors of Stuckey Farms. So this is really personal to them. That's the gate and the increase in the lot size is because this will be a lot of these will go to their personal homes.
Right.
So that's the increase on that. So if there's a special assessment in that, I'm sure they've got that worked out and they've considered that.
And that's exactly what my point is. And Derek had explained that to me, that this is going to be their personal residence. What I want to make sure as a resident of Stuckey Farms is that what's personal and what they like is also in line with the rest of the HOA, that these aren't going to look different, that they're not going to act different, they're not going to feel different, and they're not going to have different roofs and all these different things that we've had some issues with here recently. Just wanted to make sure that we're not opening that door for this to be a problem.
Yeah, so Stuckey Farms has in place their architectural control, which all the neighborhoods have to abide by. So the look and feel will be, the same architecturally as what they've been building out there with the farmhouse vibe.
Perfect. Thank you. I think Commissioner Musso had a question.
And I had a question regarding the gate. So with that gate and the maintenance of it, those tend to get expensive over time. Is that going to be a cost incurred in the entire Stuckey Farm subdivision, or is that going to be a cost incurred for those 8 lots as a separate fee?
That's something I'm not sure. I don't have an exact answer on that. I don't want to misspeak and misrepresent the Stuckey Farms team, but I'm sure they've taken that into consideration. It wouldn't seem fair to impact the whole development based off of them. So I can get an answer from Carl's group and have it ready for city council on that and be better prepared.
This is Commissioner Anderson. Just to follow up on Commissioner Musso, it wouldn't be just the gate. It would also be the private street now. It wouldn't be maintained by the city anymore, so it'd be maintained by somebody, either the master HOA or, I'm assuming, this separate HOA or whatever. But
So this is Commissioner Musso again. So this is a separate subdivision inside of Stuckey Farms. Is that correct?
Well, there's several, if you want to call them subdivisions or call them neighborhoods. There's the Meadows neighborhood, there's Homestead Heights, Crossroads. Carl's just started construction on Lakeside. Cottages sits within the farmhouse, and they all are different lot sizes and different price points and uses. For example, Cottages I know is assessed differently because they're small units that some of them actually aren't small. There's 2 different price points or sizes within the Cottages, but they're nightly rental. So they're not all assessed the same as it sits today because there's a variety of use, size, type of lot versus pad. Carl's building those little cottage units that are like 500 square feet versus some of their vacation rentals that are 12,500 square feet. So there's
get-
already a,
And I understand, I'm familiar with Stuckey Farms. I'm just questioning though is how do they allocate out the HOA then? Is the HOA fees distributed out by square footage, by house size? I mean, how is that distributed out? Because the neighborhood, it seems to me that if there is a private road and gated, then that impacts the HOA more so than
Yeah.
something with a public street.
yeah, that's a question for for Carl and his team. So I'll make sure we get that addressed. And if you guys want further explanation, he'll have to, I don't know how they allocate, how it's, if it's by square footage or by neighborhood or lot size or what, but I can pass that on to Carl's group.
Hey, Drew, this is Commissioner Hanson. We're kind of discussing a little bit here on the stand. I'm sure the mics aren't picking it up, about responsibility of the maintenance and the cost, whether it's additional cost now or any point in the future, and how that affects the rest of the residents. Are we missing something here, or is that a valid concern?
Well, I mean, it's valid for the people that live there. Yes, it is. You know, I mean, a private street has to be maintained by the owners. How that's, you know, again, but that would be in a CC&R. You know, in deed restrictions is where that would have its legs.
Randy, maybe you know the answer to this, and maybe you don't. It's Commissioner Hanson, but can you walk me through something here? If in the future there's an additional cost to maintain the street, which there would because it's private, is that shared by the entire Crossroad HOA, or is that the master?
I know those documents are hefty. As the engineers, we don't get in those. Those are more the attorney. Those are attorney prepared documents. So I've got it wrote down. That's a question for Carl. But I mean, I know there's been a lot of thought. I mean, it's like, I don't know how many rooftops are out there already, you know, and like I said, with varying neighborhoods. So this is nothing new to Stuckey Farms, the different assessment and the different this. I'm sure they've built, like Drew mentioned, it's addressed with, you know, CC&Rs and stuff along with the final plat. And so I'm sure Carl's attorney team is.
I understand that, Brandon.
Looking
Again, I think because I missed it at the beginning of the meeting, I live in Stuckey Farms. I don't have a family interest in the Crossroads. I live in the Meadows. But if, as a resident, if my HOA goes up because something happens on a private street, obviously I will go ahead and speak for the whole community and say that I wouldn't be okay with that. So I'm trying to understand a little bit, and so are the others up here, of who's going to bear the cost of that private street, because that isn't like any other street in the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of the developments that will be coming online within Stuckey Farms, because they are getting out, you know, they're getting down to their smaller units. Some of those will probably, the neighborhood, Vineyard Cove, for example, it went through preliminary plat process with Washington City, got approval back, I believe, in 2018. That whole development was full of private streets, the entire thing, because of, it was alley loaded, you know, rear garages. And so Carl, you know, that development would be assessed separately because of the private streets. So it would make sense to me. I can't once again speak for Carl, but because this is particular to this section of the Crossroads, that it would itself have a different assessment. You know, that's logical in my mind when Carl goes through these developments to assess each neighborhood per what it is. And where this is gated off, it is essentially somewhat segregated from the rest of Crossroads. I mean, if that's a big concern, you know, I've got it in my notes to have Carl address that. This is a very small section of roadway. I live in a gated community myself, and so we just voted on a dues increase, you know, to cover private streets. That's our number one cost. But this section of road is pretty minimal. It's a small right-of-way width, but I think that is something that Carl needs to address, especially for the residents of Stuckey Farms. That is a concern.
Okay, thanks. This is,
Sorry, I know that's not answering your question. It's just without Carl's team on the line, I don't want to misspeak anything, but I know the neighborhood that he's planned and prepared for do have private streets coming online. So it would make sense that they would be assessed differently to cover those costs.
hey, Drew, the question on the commission is, there's been talk about tabling this because they feel like that is an answer that they'd like to get, is how this will be paid for and maintained in the future and how it will affect the other residents. Do we need to open a public hearing if that is a motion that's coming forward?
Yeah, you have to, because we advertise a public hearing, so you have to open it up.
Okay. Commissioners, before I do that, do you have any other questions for staff or Brandy on the line?
Commissioner Anderson, Drew, are there any issues with that turnaround circle as far now that the street has been narrowed down as far as fire and so forth? Has that been looked at?
Yeah, it still has to maintain the 100-foot circle. So, I can't read this on this. This is as far as I can zoom in on this one. I don't know if Brandon has anything. But it would have to still maintain the fire radius turnaround. Did you hear me okay?
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Okay, it was just blank and I thought, my mute's off. I just didn't know if anybody heard me.
Brandy, this is Commissioner Anderson. I don't see any dimensions on this. I guess maybe you could answer this question for us since you're the one that drew this up.
It meets fire code. Required to fire, so in fact, it looks extra large because the road is so narrow, but it does meet their turnaround radius.
If you look at the 35-foot wide and how wide that is, and just it looks like it is more than 100 feet. Because you can, just I don't know if it'd be close.
I don't think so. This time, commissioners, I'm going to open up the public hearing for item 5A. Is there anybody here in the chambers that would like to speak on this topic? Alden, was there anything that might have been submitted to read at this time? At this time, it doesn't look like there are any public comments here or submitted. I look for a motion to close the public hearing on 5A.
Is Commissioner Musso so moved?
I second that. It's Commissioner Van.
I've got a first and a second. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing 5A is closed. Commissioners, you might have some other questions or comments for staff before we entertain a motion. Commissioner Hanson, my only comment for the commissioners here, the way I'm thinking is, I honestly thought this was going to go easy, and then I started thinking about that. I really would like to hear an answer of who's going to maintain any cost of that street, if it's the entire HOA, and that's something that as a resident and also as a commissioner, I'd like to know, having a private street in a community like that and how that's handled. I don't think that comes up very often. Is that correct, Drew? Or maybe it does and I just don't see it.
No, you have a good point, because this is actually part of all of the Crossroads Phase 3. I mean, not the Crossroads Phase 3. Well, it is, because these other 5 lots are part of that, and they're not on a private street. So they are going to have to write something in there. I hope that they don't put all of Phase 3 that would have to help pay for that private street. But again, it'd have to be in the CC&Rs. And the problem with CC&Rs, as many of you know, they can change You know, I could be here with one set of CCRs on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday afternoon, I could have a whole different set of CCNRs. Depending on if they followed, the way to do it, they can go down and amend them at the county pretty easy. So it's all about who votes on that, declarants, the people who are part of that. So that's something to keep in mind, even if they do answer it now, what holds for the future.
Yeah. I could think of several people I know in the neighborhood that would want that answer. So, commissioners, do you have any other comments for Drew or? Yeah. Then I'd say make a recommendation.
This is Commissioner Anderson. I make a motion that we table this until we get an answer about who's paying for the private street maintenance and the gate maintenance, if it's all of phase 3, or if it's just these separated lots, or the entire HOA. Even if we can't enforce or control the CCNRs, at least we can have the answer by the developer on public record. So if people have an issue with it later, they can at least refer to that.
Just Commissioner Shield, I would second that.
Kathy, did that qualify as a motion, or do we need to make that more specific?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Anderson to table this for the reason noted. And I've got a second by Commissioner Shield. Individual voting, Commissioner Shield.
Aye.
Commissioner Musso.
Aye.
Commissioner Fitzampu.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
I'm Commissioner Hanson. I'm an aye as well.
Just need to state when you're tabling it too.
Drew, could you give me the date when we could see that again? Would it be the
April
next
7th.
I'm sorry, that's tabled until Wednesday, April, you say 7th?
7th.
7th, April 7th. That motion passes unanimously with 5A to be tabled till April 7th. We'll move on to item 6A. This is a preliminary plat. It's also a public hearing for consideration and recommendation to our city council for the Labyrinth Point at Long Valley preliminary plat, located approximately Long Valley Road and State Route 7. The applicant is Jim Raines. Drew, I'll turn the time over to you.
Actually, I'm giving this one to Eldon. So it's his
right.
initial one, so treat him kindly.
All right,
Well,
thanks, guys.
you're up.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary plat for the Labyrinth Point at Long Valley subdivision, which is located at approximately 3400 East and 1300 South. The applicant is proposing 161 units on an area of coverage of 41.03 acres. The proposal consists of 82 single car garage units and 79 double car garage units. The zoning designation at this particular location is Long Valley Planned Community Development, or PCD. The surrounding zoning is open space to the north, county property to the east, open space to the west, and county property to the south. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. And staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined, which are our standard. So the recommendation is staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the preliminary plat for the Labyrinth Point at Long Valley subdivision to the City Council based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions, which are our standard findings and conditions, along with item number 13, which we added on and states that no final plat applications can be submitted for this subdivision until all utilities have been installed and connected to the site. And we're happy to entertain any questions that you may have at this point.
Commissioners, I welcome any questions to staff in regards to this item.
So this is Commissioner Musso. As I look at this plat, now I see a 24-foot wide private lane, and I'm assuming that's basically like an alleyway for the individuals to get in and out of their garage space or parking spaces. I guess the question is that for pads 79 through 83, where would fire be able to access that point? Do they have to stop in that cul-de-sac and then drag hoses and whatever across that? Or do they go down that 24-foot wide private lane, which is fairly long at that point? I guess that would be a question for the chief. But it just looks like there really isn't any kind of road access to that that's wide enough. Well, and that would also, well, no, because you have a public road on the other side for 137 down to 124, you have a public road on the other side. So that would be my first question for those units there. Is the chief on the line? We're getting a bunch of dead air here tonight, Drew.
Chief Evans is out of town.
Okay.
I'll come up, see if I can help if the chief's not here. Give me those lot numbers again that you're concerned about.
Okay, so the ones he has marked in red, how do you access those for fire?
There's the public road on the other side that is in the next page. You can see it down in that lower corner right there where his pencil is. That'll come up and run up to that alleyway, and then it accesses off that. There's a length of that he has to have to pull holes, and that's within that length. So it's all been reviewed. It's a fire life plan. He's approved the submittal of this.
If I'm not mistaken, you're Mr. Raines, right?
Yeah,
Kathy,
absolutely.
that was Mr. Raines, just so you know.
Yeah, Jim Raines. I wasn't going to talk. I'm going to make Don Bean come up and answer this question. So. These are similar to our units we did. We did a lot of these townhome units, alley loaded townhome units in Sienna Hills, the Casitas, the Escondido, and now Sendera. And this is very similar to that situation. He can access off the front road. He can also access them off the alleys, but the fire chief doesn't want to be stuck accessing off the alleys. So we always have a wider private road that he can access off. So he could access off that cul-de-sac and be within the pole distance. If we started stacking units beyond that, he could.
And then Drew said that each one of these units are going to have at least a double wide drive. Every one of them.
I'll invite Don. He knows the units better than I do. Every unit has 2-car parking, either in the garage, driveway, or additional parking stalls.
But your additional parking stalls, I mean, when you look at the project, you're a long ways from some of these units to wherever additional parking stall.
There's parking in the garage and in the driveway in front of the garage, plus the additional parking stalls. I'm not exactly sure what your question is.
Well, yeah, and I understand.
You can see the hatched areas of the driveways, and then the garages are interior to the building. So there's 2 stalls there, or 4 stalls if it's a double car garage.
So on your single car garages, you have the garage space.
Yeah. Remember, a typical parking stall is 8 to 10 feet wide, so 16 you can park 2 cars. Not very,
Not easy. Not
not
realistic.
my cars.
Not
maybe
realistic.
my kids.
If you had.
But even without that, we meet the parking requirements. That's just a wider thing for convenience as much as anything. Sellability.
And the issue I have is I always look at parking.
Yeah,
Because-
it's a very
because,
valid thing in these
you know,
projects.
You get into, well, especially this one, because you're going to have people in it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, Sienna Hills, you only have people there on the weekends typically,
Yeah, they're not all full. They're 90 units.
you know,
These aren't.
right. So that becomes an issue because then it becomes more like, you know, the dreaded, what's our dreaded place that Salisbury built, you know, that everybody looks at the, you know, and that's,
No, it's important to have parking for the units in proximity to units that's convenient for people to walk to. If you have a big parking lot out in the back 40, it doesn't really serve its purpose. And that's
Right.
why, but this is a project that D.R. Horton has built throughout the country, been very successful, built it in northern Utah as well, and they function very well. So they've worked through those units, and that's why, for instance, in these alley load projects, there's a driveway in front. In Casitas and Sienna Hills and the ones you used to, there's no driveway in front of the garage. It's only 3-4 feet from the back of curb to the thing. So that gives you that additional parking stall that you're not seeing in those 90 units. Because people can park in the garage and park in that. And it's not just the minimum, they're bigger than normal parking spaces. The single car garages are 14 and 16 foot wide, not just an 8 foot. It's big enough that it's functional to park a car and move and get around it.
and I hate, you know, I don't always want to be the bad guy, but historically the stuff that works in northern Utah doesn't work in St. George.
Well, that's true. But D.R. Horton is
And-
the largest builder in the nation, and they've built these throughout, you know, the Southwest and other areas. So we're very confident that in looking just from my personal experience and what we've done in Sienna Hills, without having a parking stall in front of those alley loads, that these having them, I think it makes parking better here than it is in Sienna Hills, and it functions very well in Sienna Hills. Even though it is not year-round versus non-year-round, there's a difference there.
Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that all of the garages, regardless if it's a single or a 2-car, will be 16 foot wide. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Commissioner
The
Musil?
single car garage is still 16 feet wide.
Yeah, that may help answer your question, Commissioner Musil.
Okay, so what about then, is there going to be parking? Obviously, there's not going to be parking allowed on the 24 feet wide private lane. That's a given. There's not going to be any parking. Is there going to be parking allowed on the public road?
On the public, the roads in there, are they public?
The 50,
Public roads typically, residential public roads, there's typically parking on. In residential private roads, there's typically not parking. So there's a mix in. I think our standard public road cross section is a 55 foot road. Where the city normal public road cross section is a 50 foot road. So we have a landscape median. That's why it's wide.
Hey, Brandon, this is Commissioner Hanson. Is this something with parking? Is this something that you guys go through on roads or no?
There is parking allowed on a public road, as long as it meets our, like in rest town, a 50 foot, like Jim said, the 50 foot cross section is what our standard is. This is a 5 foot bigger one. We have addressed this with Jim and his team when we did the PCD approval.
We
So-
actually added, I think, 2 feet of asphalt to our private road, to our public road cross section through staff's comments and our PCD approval. So public roads, residential public roads, we allow parking. Not all public roads, because some of the arterial streets we don't allow parking. But the local 55-foot cross section, which you just saw, allows parking. The 34-foot private road does not.
Yeah, and Brandon, this is Commissioner Hansky, and that's kind of what I was alluding to. I wanted to make sure that when we see a project like this, you've looked at parking and you're comfortable with it on your side. Is that correct? Before we even get it? Or you would have already addressed it?
The only thing I think Chief Evans just got on here. He usually has an issue with signing one side of the street, no parking on a 34, but the 55 we don't have a problem. That's typical. People park on the public roads all the time.
Okay.
We address that in the PCD approval. We specifically say where you can park and where you can't.
That's okay. That's kind of what I'm thinking is it's already been hammered out.
Yeah.
And not to put everybody on the spot tonight. Maybe they know or don't know. But you guys already addressed it.
We did in the PCD approval process. We actually added, was it 2 feet? Brandon, do you remember? I think we added 2 feet of asphalt to accommodate those lane widths for parking. I think the Sienna Hills public roads we've noticed we experienced a little bit of trouble, even though it's public with parking on both sides. So we widened that out a little bit to help alleviate that. They work pretty good, but when you're under construction, all the homes are being built, it's tough to get outside the street sometimes.
This is Commissioner Anderson. Jim, I had a couple questions. So the units in the center there, those are the alley ones, correct?
Correct.
Ones on, I guess, Elkhorn Lane.
Yes.
So those units, and this is kind of alluding back to Commissioner Musso's comment, you wouldn't really be able to make those driveways any wider without having them be one continuous driveway.
Yeah, when we had that discussion, but we felt it important to have that
A little bit
concrete
of-
broke up with some
of that, yeah.
landscaping, so aesthetically it wouldn't be just a slab of concrete.
And I agree there. I do think though that the other units where you have more room, I mean, I've seen plenty of these products close by DR, and I built plenty of these type of products. And if you have a 16-foot driveway, what happens is everybody parks on the landscaping with one side of their vehicle, because a vehicle is anywhere from 8 to 8.5 feet wide. You know, I mean, cars are maybe a little bit narrower, but in typical, if someone wants to be able to get out of their car, I need a little bit of room. And so what happens is everybody parks half on the landscaping and half on the driveway.
And Mark?
Thinking that at least in the areas where you have the room, you probably want to make that a 20-foot wide driveway, just so you don't have people driving all over the landscaping.
The units behind the red where Drew's drawn there, those are 20 foot.
The minimum is 16. There are larger than 16 foot driveways. Alluding to your point that
Because
if
then,
we can make
because
bigger
then,
driveways.
well, and that's my question. I mean,
That's a different unit footprint. You can see that
Right.
they're wider.
it's just your note on here just says that all units will have a garage with 16-foot wide and 20-foot long driveway. And so I just, which I agree, in those alley units you can't go any bigger, but I think on the other units they should be 20 feet wide, or you're gonna have, like I said, people parking all over the place.
That should probably be amended to say at a minimum 16 foot by 20 foot wide.
Don, I think you'd be committed to making those driveways as wide as physically possible.
When you guys speak, will you just say your name for Kathy, who's listening, making all the notes? I appreciate
Sure.
it. Thanks.
My name's Don Bean with D.R. Horton. And if I remember right, isn't there some that are 20 feet wide, the two garage doors?
Yeah, when this issue got brought up, it was brought up by Drew. This is Mark Rains, by the way. So the focus was on the smaller units with the single car garage, being that whether we could make it 18 or 16 foot wide. it was decided that we couldn't because of landscape and AC unit being up front, and we couldn't abide by the 18-foot. That's where that note came from, being focused on those small ones. I do believe that there is larger ones than
larger in width than the 16-foot. So that note probably should be changed to say minimum of a 16-foot.
So I think what we need to
Or
say
or
is-
we can add a dimension on each.
Yeah, I just think we need to say the alley units have, 16-foot wide minimum, and the non-alley units have a 20-foot wide driveway, and that's going to alleviate a lot of headaches down the road.
And that easily could be done with a condition of your guys' approval, so we can move on to city council.
And to be honest with you, we internally that's why I had to bring it on. We've had discussion back and forth with D.R. Horton. Originally, we were going to put a slab in there. So this really isn't what we need, some landscape and things. If I recall, the Santa Clara units have 20-foot driveways. And I think we're comfortable with that, just like that, the way you've got it sketched. Just like you said, non-alley units would be 20 alley.
Okay.
Just trying to
Thank you.
what our internal debate.
No, you're good.
There is a exterior air conditioning you have to fit in too.
So really, as Commissioner Hanson, so what we're talking about here is when possible, getting a 20-foot driveway, we want to get a 20-foot driveway. With the exception, not having the slab. I wouldn't like that. I'd like the landscape.
We're in complete agreement with that.
Okay.
Perfect.
I don't know. Do you guys want to answer that? The landscape strip 2 feet
I think
down?
our discussion centered more on 3. I think we tried to maintain at least 3 to 5. 2 is pretty narrow. Where do you have to put the air conditioning? They just sit up next to the building. It's not the typical one like it's a small one. It's on the alley. It's on the alley.
area here on each unit. Keep in mind on the alley loaded ones that where the driveway is the back of the house.
Right.
The pretty part of the house is the front part of
Right.
the house. So the AC unit goes between the driveways. That's why we can't make it. Well, that's why it's not preferable to make it a concrete slab all the way across.
See, and I'm trying to think of Sienna Hills off the top of my head, where
We put them
On the
side of
sides.
the units.
but you have multiple buildings with 4 units in each one, right? So you put it on the end of,
There's multiple units.
so you put, okay.
on the sides, just a different way to do it.
Perfect. So we're in agreement on that, Anderson. Do you have anything else to add on that?
Commissioner Anderson again, I guess if that's the case, if we have the AC units in between on those little strips, I mean, how much room do we have between driveway? It looks like we have, well, on these inner units, we've only got 2 feet between driveways there. Is your AC gonna fit between there?
The units,
It says you got an 18-foot width on the inner units, and you got a 16-foot driveway, so that only leaves.
it's 20 feet on the other ones, so that's more than 2 feet.
Yeah, I'm mainly referring to the center portion there. I mean, I guess are you stacking 2 on each of them between the 20-foot unit there?
Yes. I think that's what it-
Okay, so you got 5 feet between driveways then. Okay.
I know we discussed that we didn't want anything less than 3 because it just didn't really
It's just
function.
tight. I'm mostly worried about people hitting your AC units or whatever with their car if they're a little too tight.
I think that's the way it should be.
Mark,
You're talking to horizontal guys, not vertical guys.
no, I know. Just thinking out loud. Question for you, Mark. This is Commissioner Anderson again. What's the grading on here that just in reference to the driveways? And my point being, are all these relatively flat driveways or any of them steep? The reason being, if we've only got a 20-foot long driveway and then you got your sidewalk, what happens in these units is they tend to fit the cars fine if they're relatively flat, but as soon as you get steep, everyone starts parking on the side, across the sidewalk and out into the street.
I'm happy we have 20 foot. I'm used to dealing with 5 foot driveways.
Yeah.
in
No, I
San
mean,
Hills.
it's good. It's just
This
the grade.
product type almost demands a pretty flat side, just because you can't take up a whole lot of grade because of how long they are. So the grade is going to be minimal just by the fact of how long each building is, and there's nothing I can do about that. Yeah. Side to side.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bullock, did you have a question?
I did. Kathy, this is Commissioner Bullock. Probably for Brandon, this Long Valley Road, is that the main entrance into basically what Long Valley is going to become off of SR7 exit right there?
Correct. It'll go underneath the Southern Parkway and tie into what is Washington Dam Road, but also tie into the corridor as well.
So where these units, is there going to be, where it comes down, this is going to be basically like Washington Parkway where it comes down and goes all the way out through the valley?
I believe that's the one that's going to go all the way through the valley. Isn't that correct, Jim? The Long Valley Parkway ties all the way through the project.
Yeah, zoom out, will you, Drew, and I can show you how that works. There is a single throat entrance coming in, and then that's a roundabout you see there. And at that roundabout, the road splits, the main road splits. So we have actually two parkway roads, one on the east and one on the west that goes through there. So
don't we have several more? We have several roundabouts through the project on that road.
Roundabouts through, yeah. So the main thing is you come in and then the roads hit the roundabout, split, and go around the center part of the project where that's going, that goes into the clubhouse and things. But main part of the center part of the project is a linear park that runs the entire length, 3.5 miles of Long Valley. So the main traffic goes each direction. There's not a central road down the middle. There's two roads. It's the same size, parkway roads.
Okay.
One goes up along the hill, the other one up on the ridge side, the other one goes on the southern parkway side. I don't.
Commissioner Bullock, answer.
If you, Drew, if you can bring up a master plan, that may help them. But I don't know, unfortunately.
Master plan of this, I don't have that available right now tonight.
If you look down in the exhibits that we have,
Yeah.
you scroll down.
Yeah. And that main road is significantly lower in elevation than those townhomes. It's set up high. So we put the
there we
road
go.
down low for noise mitigation.
Okay, yeah, that's, well, I was
So as you look on a flat sheet, see there, you can kind of see how that goes. See, the one road goes up and around, the other road comes up.
That's the one that goes all the way through that'd be the south side of the project, running through there along the base of the hill, correct, Jim?
Yeah, the road at the top goes clear up, and that actually acts as goes right to the toe of the hill. There's no lots on the upper side of the road for rockfall protection along there.
basically the east side. I mean, if Long Valley runs north and south, that's going to be over
That's the
towards
east side.
Warner Valley.
Yeah, that's the ridge line between Warner Valley and
Okay.
And that Long Valley Parkway goes right to the toe of that hill.
But that's, I mean, Long Valley's gonna, I mean, it's gonna go further than 3 miles, right?
No, it goes about 3.5 miles and then it ends in the hill.
Okay, thank you.
And you can see where that sits in relationship to the whole thing here.
Jim, if you wouldn't mind hanging out, I'm going to open this for a public comment. It says public hearing. At this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing for the preliminary plat on item 6A. Is there anybody here in the chambers that would like to speak to this item? Or Eldon, is there any comments that were submitted?
There are no comments.
All right. Nope, nobody lives out there. That's a good point. At this time, I'll look for a motion to close the public hearing.
Commissioner Anderson, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Got a first and a second.
Shield, I'd second that.
Got a first by Anderson, second by Shield. All in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed. Commissioners, at this time, any additional comments for staff or Mr. Raines or anybody here in the chambers? Kathy, we got Jim coming back. All right, go ahead, Jim.
This is Jim. That second page on it does look like just a big lot. It's our main clubhouse area, which is being built day one, phase one. So that area right there where he's marking, that's part of this preliminary plat. We talked about the townhomes, but we're building that big amenity area in phase one. I know the cities in the past have had some concerns about the delay in those, but we committed in our PCD that that would be built up front. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim. Commissioners, if no other questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion on item 6A.
I have one other question. I'm sorry. How big are these units typically, square footage wise? I mean, 14 to 1,800 square feet like Sandy Hills, or are they going to be bigger units?
Yes, he said 14 to 18 square feet. They're 2 stories. They're all 2 stories.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Anderson. I make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for Labyrinth Point at Long Valley subdivision with the 13 conditions listed and recommended by the planning department, as well as the condition that the alleyway units have a 16-foot minimum driveway, and all the non-alleyway units have a 20-foot minimum driveway.
At first by Commissioner Anderson. Looking for a second.
Commissioner Van, I second that.
One question. Do we need to include as number 14 that, and I know this is a given, but that the Washington Dam Road be completed by the time that the final plat is submitted? That talks about utilities. I'm talking about the expansion of the road. I mean, I know you guys have committed to do that.
We have run into some delays. I just want, not that I have a problem with the thing I just want to bring you up. We didn't have it, nobody's been able to secure, the portion that goes through the BLM. And evidently we never had a right away from the BLM. So we're going to have to go through a process with the BLM to get that before we construct that point. I would hope it doesn't delay us, but it's just something that came up today that we found out. So I just want to make you aware of that. And then there's been a lot of work because we didn't have city didn't have any right of way out there. So we've had a lot of issues to obtain the right of way. We'd hoped to have been under construction way before now. But it's I think we've got 99% of the issues resolved now.
Well, you got survey stakes all the way along, and I know that.
Yeah, the last 2 months of my life has been going back and forth between home and Washington.
Okay, and my mind just went blank.
But the water, the sewer, all that has to be in before we can build homes, obviously. We're not going to be able to find a plat before we have those. I think the road will be done for the most part. There's just one Norman came up today.
What are you looking at time-wise for this particular phase? You're projected.
Construction,
Yeah.
we're hoping to have finished lots by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I still have a motion on the table and a second on the table. Kathy, are those okay, or do we need to revisit those?
No, that's.
We're good.
I'm good.
Okay, I've got a motion by Commissioner Anderson. I've got a second by Commissioner Fitzonfu. Individual voting, Commissioner Shield. Aye. Commissioner Musso.
Aye.
Commissioner Fitzonfu.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson, I'm an aye as well. Item 6A passes. We'll pass along to our recommendation for approval to the City Council. Item number 6B, this is also a public hearing for consideration and recommendation to City Council for Star Springs at Long Valley preliminary plat located approximately Long Valley Road and State Route 7. The applicant is the same Jim Raines. Drew, Eldon, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thanks, guys. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary plat for the Star Springs at Long Valley subdivision located at approximately 3300 East, 1300 South. The applicant is proposing 210 lots on an area of coverage of 60.28 acres. The lot size range from approximately 4,100 square feet to 7,100 square feet and will accommodate patio-style homes up to medium-sized homes for the given area. The zoning designation at this particular location is Long Valley Planned Community Development. The surrounding zoning is open space to the north, county property to the east, open space to the west, and county property to the south. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinance as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with the conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the preliminary plat for the Star Springs at Long Valley subdivision to the City Council based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions, which are our standard 12, along with the condition number 13, which we added, that states no final plat applications can be submitted for this subdivision until all utilities have been installed and connected to the site. And we're happy to answer any questions at this time.
Hey, Commissioners, any questions for the staff at this time?
I'm having this Musso. I'm having a hard time orienting this. So
It's due west, just west of what we currently looked at, Labyrinth. It's the next one.
So Drew, where's your handy dandy pencil?
Yeah, and then this was the one you just did over here.
Right.
And so it's just this direction.
So it's
Sorry, these are kind of turned upside down compared to your plats. Apologize.
Exactly.
So, but I know you guys are talented enough to flip those around in your head. So,
obviously I'm not, so. And I look at plats every day of my life.
but you get, yeah, if you just turn this around, that gets you, you know, let me see if, I got to get rid of that area now. So, but now you kind of know where it's at. You know, right in here. Let's head back up. Along this area. So does that, can you know, this particular area, I'm going to just let me highlight this out. This is that Central Park area. Okay, keep that in mind as now I bring you down. Over in here. And this kind of shows that Central Park area. Darn, my pencil's not picking up. That kind of picks that area up in here.
That's fine. Thanks, Drew. That gives me an idea where they're at. So I'm assuming you guys are going to try to build these out concurrently with the townhomes. Is that correct?
Jim Raines again. Yeah, the project will be built in phases. The preliminary plat is a series of phases.
Right.
And so both the townhomes and the different lot sizes will be built in a number of phases, 2 or 4 phases each. Yeah, but depend on demand.
So we're just-
Typically, a preliminary plat's a bigger.
We're just way ahead of the curve is what we're doing tonight, basically.
Correct. And then we'll come back with final plat with some, less depending on what the demand is. And there's about 3 product types in the patio homes, and then 2 different price points of the single family homes in this, but they're all single family detached homes. The townhomes, the attached product is one plat, the detached product is another. And I'm glad you got oriented because I was having a hard time figuring out where it is. But a big chunk of the amenities in that front park is actually in that last plat you approved. We didn't even look at that second page because that was all open space. And then we committed to do that linear park as we went, not leave it to the end. As we go. So that has drainage and trails and a lot of other things. It is the trails at Long Valley, and so that's a big part of our amenities, the trail connections.
So, and I hate to digress, but then, so what are you using for drainage on that first plat that we looked at?
The drainage generally all goes to that Central Park area. That's the low-lying area of the project. And there's detention basins and retention basins. And we meet all our new lid requirements. And Mark has submitted all those drainage studies and things with the preliminary plat. So those conditions listed, we've already met most of this. Long Valley kind of all drains to that central area. And there's a big wash that runs through there, a power line. So. We're also got an open space hill up there next to the parkway, which is a property that's in these 2 plats. You go out there, there's quite a hill right there as you climb up out of that interchange.
Yeah.
What's the depth of the driveway on these? They look kind of narrow, like
The depth, they're almost 20 feet.
they are 20 feet.
We're not showing driveways, we're just showing the model. So, I don't know what you're looking at. There's no driveways on these lots. But by our PCD approval and city standards, it's 20 foot to the front from the front of the garage. So your car doesn't overhang the sidewalk. The actual house can sit closer, but the garage has to be 20 feet back.
Commissioners, well, do you have any other questions for Mr. Raines or staff at this time? Otherwise, don't. And I'll wait for it if you do, but if you don't, then we'll open it up for a public hearing. At this time, I'm going to open up item 6B, public hearing. If there's anybody here in the chambers that'd like to speak to this item, or Eldon, anybody that has submitted any comments.
No comments were submitted.
Perfect. I'll look for a motion from the commissioners to close the public hearing for item 6B.
Commissioner Anderson, I make a motion to close the public hearing on item 7B.
Commissioner Van, second that.
Got a first and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. At this time, commissioners, will open it back up for you. Any other additional comments or questions for staff or the applicant? And if there are none, I'll entertain a motion when that is appropriate.
I'm going to back up a little bit on, and maybe we make it on this motion, but I like Commissioner Musso's comment about the road being completed before, before final plat. I just think we understand the utilities are going to be there, but that road's going to be a mess if we don't complete before final plat. So I would suggest we do that as a number 14.
Jim, do you see any issue with that?
Unfortunately, I don't know what BLM is going to do.
Yeah.
So
Let's think.
I don't foresee any problems, but I was just hit with that this afternoon that the county was sure they had a copy of a right-of-way from the BLM. The city was sure they had a copy. The BLM was sure they had a copy. As of today, nobody found a copy. So we're having to apply for an application to build a road. And that's just a hurdle that I wasn't in our schedule. I don't know what that's going to do. They assure me it doesn't have to go through because it's an existing roadway that's there and it's disturbed. We don't have to go through any of the NEPA process, the environmental stuff. It's just an application. That's the only possible thing that would delay us. I just don't have enough information because it's brand new as of today.
So could you see worst case scenario from our point of view though? As if
I don't know, and I'm
so
fine having that condition. And if for some reason that section didn't get all the way improved, and we didn't want to hold the R up for 2 months, then we'd come in and ask you for consideration on that. I don't want to ask you to consider something I don't know if it's going to be a problem or not. It's not our intention for it to be a problem. I just can't control the BLM.
So is it that corner as you swing around the corner? And, yeah.
And
Across
it's
street from
just
Palmer's.
weird because each one of those property owners have a separate right of way out to the road.
Right.
And we found all those documents, but the road itself, it just doesn't seem to be any kind of document on it.
did they give you an estimated timeline that it might take to get it done?
They said it should be fairly quickly, and we've got a great relationship with the BLM. Long Valley was acquired in the land exchange with the BLM. We have donated, Brennan Holdings has donated tens of millions of dollars to the BLM and the Red Trust Museum. So we've got a little bit of goodwill with them, so hopefully we can get it done. But like I said, it literally at 2 o'clock today, I found this out. So they haven't even sent me the application yet. So I think we can get it done, but it's fine putting that on there. If we run into a problem, we'll come back and ask for consideration if we need it. Hopefully we don't need it.
Perfect. I think that commissioners, when you make your motion, we should at least mention that on here as a condition.
I just want to be upfront with it.
And absolutely, yeah. At the same time, we need to put something on it, just that we're acknowledging it, we're aware of it, because heaven forbid something happen and they're ready to go, but we can't get it through. So I don't know how you want to word it. Thank goodness I don't have to make the motion, but
if we could put something like that, make sure that the road is complete, subject to obtaining the BLM right away. Then at least we know that's an issue and we can address it. I don't think it's going to be a problem. They're not telling me it's going to be a problem. I've just dealt with federal government enough that I'm kind shy on it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, commissioners, I'll entertain a motion on item 6B.
This is Commissioner Shield, I'll take a stab at it. I would propose that we approve this preliminary plat for Star Springs at Long Valley subdivision located approximately 3300 east, 1300 south. Applicant Jim Raines, owner DR Horton. I would suggest we send this to the City Council for approval with the 13 conditions that the staff has put on, and I would add a number 14 that the road, Washington Dam Road, be completed prior to final plat approval. So I'll leave it like that. We,
Dependent on approval from the BLM. That was said, Jim.
well, how can we say that?
Yeah. Acknowledging that the BLM right away must be attained. Perfect. Kathy, did any of that make sense?
I could not hear what was said about, I think Jim made the comment, but I couldn't hear it.
Jim's coming up right now.
I would suggest we add acknowledging that the BLM right away needs to be obtained. It's not, you know, it's just an issue that we know we're going to have to address, may or may not have to address. So
Yeah, but the road still needs to be completed.
I just can't build it if they don't have.
Well, we understand that. I mean, we let the other one go through and you'll be able to have final plat on the other ones and kickstart that.
This will just get city council's attention to look at it and understand that
Yeah,
we're all going to work together. to get
All I
this
really
done.
want to do is make everyone aware that there's this issue that's come up today. And that I don't think it's going to be a problem, but we got to work through it.
Okay, thank you.
Let's understand, as soon as the project is built, doesn't mean that we're gonna have a bunch of homes there that need a huge traffic load all up front, so.
But any
But we'll do our
additional
best.
traffic load on that road is too much. I mean, that thing's a disaster.
Oh, we know. Yeah. Try to fit an 85-foot right away along there.
Oh, we have a motion.
Kathy,
The only contingency I'd see if for some reason the BLM takes too long, I've got everything done. And we're doing the final cleanup on that BLM section. These guys are ready to go. But I know the city and I know you guys are all reasonable, so it doesn't bother me. We know that road has to be built. Everybody knows that road has to be built, including the BLM. And they said today, we're not gonna stop improving the road. Whether we can get the bike path in there because it's not part of the thing, I don't know. But it's just a lot of little issues we gotta hammer out. But the road will be built. We know it has to.
And we do too. We just want that.
In that, again, Don being, we don't want to have a delay longer than necessary, and we wanted to start immediately. And maybe we could tie it to more certificate of occupancy or another way where we could start, and then you can hold us up if the road's not finished at the point where it would start to affect the road traffic.
so we have a motion on the table. Kathy, were you able to get that motion?
Yes.
And commissioners, are we comfortable with that motion where somebody would second that?
Commissioner Anderson, I'll second that.
Well, now, hold on for a second, though. Because what he just said is completely different.
It is.
than
Well,
what
yeah.
we just,
That's why I just ignored it. And we're gonna go
Right.
back to what Mr. Raines is okay with. We're gonna go from there. I don't think they're not gonna get it done. We just want to acknowledge the city council, there's an issue they're working through and let them handle it.
no, I understand that, but what that last comment is asking for basically is final plat approvals and you hold up COs. I mean, because then you still have 3 or 4 months to build houses.
All that is a proposed solution that we would come in at the final plat if we need it. We don't, I don't want to try to, you know, what is the Martians land scenarios happens. I just want to make everybody aware that there's this issue. We're acknowledging it. If we run into some minor thing that we feel everybody can live with, as that one may be one option, we would just bring that forth with the final plat. You'd have reconsideration of city council.
That's valid. That's valid.
That's kind of what I thought. We
Yeah,
can change it.
we could do it at that point. Thank you.
I have a motion on the floor for Commissioner Shield and a second by Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Shield, individual voting. Aye. Commissioner Musso.
Aye.
By the way, Kathy, Commissioner Shield is an aye. Commissioner Fitzonfu.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson, I'm an aye as well. Motion passes. 6B, move to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Thanks, Jim and staff. Item number 7A. This is a public hearing for consideration and recommendation to City Council, a zone change request Z-21-07 for the design of a current planned unit development for Red Mesa at Sunrise Valley, located approximately 400 South Country Way. The applicant is Midden LLC. And Drew, is this one going to be you or Eldon?
It'll be me.
I turn the time over to you, Drew.
Thank you very much. As stated, the applicant's requesting approval of the design and use approval are okay for the currently zoned PUDR property, which is approximately 16.22 acres in size. Property is located, as stated earlier, at roughly 400 South Country Way. The name of this particular portion of the master planned area will be known as Red Mesa at Sunrise Valley. Property was granted the PUDR zoning at an earlier date, the applicant knowing they would have to come back to the city for specific design and use approval. The applicant is now wishing to do that with this proposed plat that you see before you. The PUDR requires an approved site design before the property can be used as the residential development. The applicant is proposing 66 detached building pads. This would have a 4.07 dwelling unit per acre ratio. The surrounding zoning to this project is PUDR to the south, east, and west, and open space zoning to the north. Staff has no concerns with the proposed design of the project. The overall development has a city park being built within the master planned area, but it is still under construction, being done in phases as each pod has its requirement to fulfill. This phase will be that final requirement to have the park completed in its entirety. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of Z-2107 for the specific site design use to the already zoned planned unit development residential PUDR zoning onto the city council, and based on the following findings that you see in your report and the conditions associated with that. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the commissioners have. I'll just start with this particular. This is the layout of the pads in yellow and the street layout. Just to give you a reference, it's this yellow area again up here that you see as basically it's pod number 4. The only thing remaining is pod 5, and which will basically only be allowed to have, I think we figured somewhere between 26 and 29 lots because they were limited on the whole entire project of a 532 unit development. So pod 5 will have some nice big lots in it or a lot of open space, but tonight it's pod 4 here in the yellow, and we'll just kind of move down. You can see the common areas and limited common areas. This is just a contour topo map. And then here's the landscaping kind of layout that will be associated with this particular pod.
Drew, this is Commissioner Musso. This is basically going up the hill, isn't it?
Roughly, yes, toward the landfill, yes.
This is Commissioner Hanson. I'm gonna open up the public hearing at this time to get it out of the way. Is there anybody here in the chambers who would like to speak to this item? Or Drew, is there anybody that has submitted, or Eldon, is there anybody that submitted a comment?
There are no comments.
I entertain a motion to close the public hearing from the commissioner.
This is Phil. I would make a motion that we close the public hearing.
This is Musso. I second that.
I've got a first and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we got the public hearing out of the way. Commissioner, do you have any questions for Drew or the applicant on this particular item? Drew, one of the things we're talking about up here on the stand, I know you guys can't hear. The previous applicant, we had him do 20-foot driveways. And it's been noted up here that these are 18-foot driveways. And we're just curious. Now, first thing I thought of was these units aren't as close together. That's one of the things that I thought. So maybe that buffers it and makes it a little different. But yeah, one of the questions is, well, Commissioner Anderson, I'll let you take over and address that.
Commissioner Anderson, I guess I'm just thinking in the spirit of being fair and for the same reasons, an 18-foot driveway is better than a 16-foot driveway, definitely, but you still run the risk of people parking on the landscaping. And if we've got all these criteria here for, detailed landscape and irrigation plans and all the stuff, and then we allow driveways that are, a width that encourages people to park on the landscaping, I think it's counterproductive. So.
Drew, is our history as a city, this is Commissioner Hanson, as a city, actually maybe Brandon, either or, with the 18 and 20 foot and what the issue that we're talking about, have we dealt with that in the past? What is it that we're comfortable with as a city doing? Yeah, is it being petty, or is this something that's an issue that we should start looking at now and in the future?
Well, I'm trying to find, what is your question again? I'm not, I kind of heard everything, but sometimes things get muffled.
I know. So our previous applicant, we had him change to a 20-foot driveway instead of 18 because of, I'm sorry, not long, wide, the width. And we required them to do that so cars would not be parking on the landscaping, because we thought it was too thin. You put two cars in there and they've got one wheel on the landscaping, one wheel on the driveway. And the discussion up here from Commissioner Anderson is whether or not we should be consistent as a city in an applicant like this to have 20-foot wide driveways instead of the 18. Did I get that, Anderson? Is that correct? Did that make sense, Drew? And so I'm just curious if
it does, but where are you finding? I'm trying to find out on this plan where you're looking at the width.
Right there, Drew. Oh, never mind. Sorry, wrong one.
Go ahead.
I'm being told it's in the conditions.
It's condition number 7.
Oh, you're okay. I thought you were talking on the plan.
Actually, I can see that the consistency would be a good thing if that's what we're going to hold to through the planning commission. It'd probably be good to stay consistent with everything through there.
This is Commissioner Anderson. Yeah, I agree. And I've seen lots of products around town where you've got 16, 17, 18-foot driveways, and everybody, they park on the landscaping because you have to be able to get out of your vehicle to do it. So I just think if they've got the room, which they do, and if we're requiring a certain width on there, we should be consistent with the last applicant.
Well, the city is consistent. Let me just tell you, it's always been a minimum of 18 for me, because if I'm using it, especially to cover parking, okay? Now they can go bigger if they want. I don't, and some of them do. Some of them, they do the whole width of the garage, whatever's on there. Some of them end up being 20 and 22 feet. But the reason I stick with an 18 is because basically our parking standards in the city is a 9x19 parking stall. So if I'm having 2 of those driveways, that's where I come up with my 18. And I have been consistent across the board. Your last applicant, if you attended my staff developer meeting, as Brandon and the rest of us do, I told them I wanted 18. They said, well, they're going to bring 16. And I said, well, that's going, that'll go before your planning commission. I don't know how thrilled they'll be about that. So we are consistent at 18, just so you know.
So you mean we were going to see 16 prior to that meeting?
No, they proposed 16 and I'm glad you guys came back and said, you know what, we don't like that, for certain areas. Now in the alleyways and because of the size of the units, that's up for you guys to whether you're going to accept that, and even the city council, if they're going to accept that. Staff has always promoted 18 or bigger.
I say, Commissioner Anderson, if you would like to add that as a condition, that's something for city council to consider for sure. Take it easy.
I don't think it's an issue. But knowing the product that goes out in these units, I don't think it's an issue.
All right.
I just wanted to put a minimum so that they don't go any less than. Does that make sense?
It does. if 18 seems to be an issue, maybe staff doesn't feel that 18 is an issue. Do you see cars parking on landscaping, things like that, Drew, at 18?
Well, no, but the last, because of the street design of the last one compared to this one, it is going to be different. Those guys had a landscape strip that they're going to cross over, then hit a sidewalk, then into the driveway on the last one because it's in the PCD. This one's going to go directly off the back of the curb and the sidewalk.
So it'll vary project to project.
It does, and the street designs. Yeah, the last one has more of a chance out on the public street roads, that design in the last one of running over landscaping, I think, because of it's got that landscape strip that's in between the sidewalk and the curb. Now that I have a sidewalk on these streets, if they're driving that bad, then maybe we better send the cops around and do breathalyzers maybe. But when I have a curb, gutter, and sidewalk, people driving on landscaping, that's pretty poor parking. And I don't know if we can regulate against bad drivers, but I mean, I see the point. I'm just saying the minimum is 18.
Any other questions for staff and the commissioners? Any other discussion among commissioners? Anderson, are you comfortable with where we stand on that?
And commissioners, if I may, if you want to make it wider, feel free to do so.
This is Commissioner Anderson's. I'm not trying to set new, city policy or anything. I just think we just barely had this discussion with an applicant. It's a little hypocritical if we don't require the same thing.
With that being said, I say we put it as a condition for city council to consider, and let's let them decide if they want to look at that as a city standard. That's, whatever, by project, whatever they want to decide. But there's something that will be noted in the minutes and in the reports that we saw back-to-back applicants where we asked two different things. So with that being said, I'll look for a motion on our amendment or motion on item 7A.
Commissioner Anderson, I make a motion to approve the design and use of the Red Mesa at Sun Valley with the 9 conditions for the planning department plus a 10th condition that the city council consider a 20-foot minimum width driveway. We send it on to city council.
Got a first by Commissioner Anderson,
Commissioner Musso, I second.
got a second by Commissioner Musso. Individual voting, Commissioner Shield. Aye. Commissioner Musso.
Aye.
Commissioner Fitzonford.
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
And Commissioner Hanson. I'm an aye as well. That passes unanimously. Item 7A, we'll move along to City Council with consideration, a recommendation for approval. And that is the agenda item set for this evening. Is there anything that either staff or the commissioners needs to bring before the body this evening? If not, I look for a motion to close the meeting, adjourn the meeting until, I don't even know the next day. April 7th.
This Commissioner Shield, I would propose that we close this meeting and until April 7th, have our new meeting.
It's Commissioner Musso, I second that.
Got a first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Drew and Kathy and everybody, all the staff, Eldon, thank you guys again for all your efforts. Appreciate it.